I met Alyssa 10 years ago. I was 25, just getting my feet under me after a messy breakup and a couple years of floating between contract jobs. She was 23, fresh out of grad school with a suitcase full of dreams and a smile that made you forget what day it was. It was at a bookstore, of all places. Yeah, I know. Real rom-com setup. I was sitting on one of those faux leather chairs in the corner, flipping through a tech magazine, and she sat down across from me with a coffee and a travel guide in her lap. We ended up making small talk about Iceland, of all things. Neither of us had ever been. I made some dumb joke about volcanoes, and she actually laughed. Like, full-on, head-back kind of laugh. That moment stuck. We didn't exchange numbers that day. I chickened out. But a week later, I saw her again. Same bookstore, different chair, and this time, I didn't let her leave without giving me her number. Our first date was 2 nights later. Sushi and a walk around the park. We talked until almost midnight. I still remember the way she looked at the koi pond, like she was searching for something deeper in the water. Alyssa had this energy, like she was always 5 seconds ahead of the moment. She could be intense in conversation, thoughtful, fiery in debates, but always quick to smile. She loved to travel. Her dream was to hit every continent before 35. I told her I just wanted to own a house with a garage that didn't flood when it rained. Somehow, we met in the middle. We got married after 3 years. Small wedding, just family and close friends. No drama, no extravagant anything. Just us and vows we wrote ourselves. She cried while reading hers. I couldn't stop staring at her the entire time. People talk about soulmates like it's some fairy tale idea, but that day, I was sure I had mine. Our early married life was pretty steady. I work in IT, mostly back-end systems stuff. It's not flashy, but it pays well and keeps me home. She landed a job doing brand strategy for a travel company, which suited her perfectly, creative, fast-paced, and just enough movement to keep her from feeling trapped. We moved into a modest house in a quiet neighborhood about 4 years ago. Not huge, but enough for the two of us. We talked about kids, but decided to wait a few more years and just enjoy each other. Weekends were our time. Saturday morning breakfasts, spontaneous drives to nowhere, tackling weird Pinterest recipes. She got me into hiking, something I never thought I'd enjoy, and I got her into board games and sci-fi shows. It was a good balance. We laughed a lot. I always thought laughter was our secret weapon. I'm telling you all this because before things fell apart, before I had reason to question anything, this was our life. Simple. Good. Maybe even great. I honestly thought I hit the jackpot. Anyway, that's how we started. Just 2 people who met in a bookstore, found something real, and built a life from the ground up. So after the wedding and the honeymoon phase, which, to be honest, lasted a good while, life settled into something that felt solid. Not always exciting, not always smooth, but solid in a way that made me feel like I was exactly where I needed to be. Alyssa and I weren't flashy people. We weren't the couple posting curated date night photos or constantly broadcasting our lives online. But we were happy in the quiet ways. The kind of happiness that looks boring from the outside but feels golden when you're in it. We had our rituals. Sunday mornings were sacred pancakes, French press coffee, music playing low in the background while we planned the week. Every Friday night was movie night, no exceptions. Sometimes we'd argue about what to watch. She leaned toward moody dramas or true crime, while I was more into sci-fi or dumb comedies. But we always found a middle ground, even if it meant rewatching something we'd already seen 3 times. She'd curl up next to me, legs across my lap, head on my chest. Those moments felt timeless. We were both busy during the week. I worked from my home office upstairs, managing a team of developers scattered across the country. Alyssa worked mostly from her laptop too, but she'd take video calls from the dining room, half the time barefoot with a cup of tea in her hand. Every once in a while I'd overhear her mid-pitch, pacing around the room, firing off brand buzzwords I didn't fully understand. She was good at what she did. Confident, charismatic, sharp as hell. We supported each other. That's what I keep coming back to when I look at those years, how much support we gave, and how natural it felt. When I had a brutal project deadline, she'd leave snacks and notes on my desk. When she was stressed out after back-to-back meetings, I'd rub her shoulders and convince her to take a break and watch a show with me. We were a team. Vacations were Alyssa's thing. She handled the planning, the itineraries, the hotel bookings, everything. I used to joke that she could run her own travel agency. We went to Costa Rica, Quebec, Lake Tahoe, even took a random road trip up the Pacific coast just because she saw a photo on Instagram and said, "Let's do it." I said yes before thinking about the cost. I always did. That was kind of the pattern. She dreamed it. I made it work. And honestly, I didn't mind. Seeing her excited made me happy. She brought energy into every room she entered. At parties or dinners with friends, she was always the one telling stories, making people laugh, getting folks out of their shells. I was more reserved, content to listen, observe, throw in a line here or there. But we balanced each other out. Our friends used to call us the grounded dreamer and the quiet anchor. I think that was pretty accurate. We had our disagreements, sure. No marriages without them. Dumb little things, mostly like her leaving mugs everywhere or me forgetting to start the dishwasher. But nothing serious. Nothing that ever made me question her or us. If anything, we were just normal. Comfortably normal. The kind of normal people chase for years. And here's the truth. I loved that normal. I never wanted fireworks every day. I didn't need grand gestures. I just wanted someone to come home to, someone to make dinner with, binge shows with, fall asleep next to while the dog hogged all the blanket space. That's what I had. Or thought I had. If there's one thing I can say about those first 7 years of marriage, it's that I never questioned her loyalty. Not once. And maybe that was naive, or maybe it was just the natural byproduct of building something over time, brick by brick, day by day. We weren't just husband and wife. We were best friends. We knew each other's coffee orders, favorite snacks, weird mood patterns, and all the little stories that come out at 2 a.m. when you're half asleep but too tangled up in a conversation to care. Alyssa knew me better than anyone else. And I honestly believed I knew her just as well. She'd always been fiercely independent. She liked having her own space, her own time, her own routines. And I respected that. It's what made her who she was, this mix of warmth and fire. I never wanted to clip her wings. I saw myself as the guy who helped her fly further. Our 5-year anniversary gift to each other was a long weekend in Asheville, tucked away in the mountains. We stayed in a little cabin, cooked meals together, hiked trails during the day, and played cards by the fire at night. That trip still lives in my memory like a snapshot. Not because of anything grand, but because of the stillness, the contentment, the feeling that we'd hit our stride. We started talking seriously about having kids around that time. Not just in the vague, someday kind of way, but real plans. We even toured a couple of houses with better school districts. We weren't quite ready, but we were laying the groundwork. And even though I was nervous, who isn't? I was excited. The thought of Alyssa as a mom? It just made sense. And that's the thing. She was nurturing in the ways that counted. She remembered birthdays, sent handwritten notes, always knew when someone needed cheering up. She made our home feel like a home, not just a place we lived. There was always a candle burning, something baking, music playing. She brought life to everything. She was also the one who pushed us to try new things. Dance classes, we sucked. Cooking lessons, slightly better. Even an improv night once that went exactly how you'd imagine two introverts trying comedy would go. But I always said yes. Partly because I wanted to be a good sport, partly because I loved the way she lit up when we stepped outside our routine. I was happy. I didn't always say it out loud. I probably should have more, but I was. We'd sit on the porch some evenings, a glass of wine in her hand, a beer in mine, and talk about the future. Where we wanted to travel next. How many kids we thought we'd have. Whether we'd stay in this town or move closer to the coast one day. She'd say things like, "We're doing this right, you know? Life. Us." And I'd smile and say, "Yeah, we really are." And I believed it. With every fiber of my being. So if you're reading this and thinking I must have missed signs, that something must have been off, I get it. That's what I would have thought too. But I promise you, if there were cracks forming, they were hairline fractures invisible to the eye. At least, until everything started to shift. I remember the week she told me about the trip like it was yesterday. It was a Tuesday night. We were sitting on the couch, both of us buried in our laptops, half watching something on Netflix neither of us was really paying attention to. She looked over and said casually, "So the girls are talking about doing a getaway next month. Just us. Long weekend. No husbands. You cool with that?" I looked up. "Where to?" "Somewhere tropical. Maybe Cabo or Tulum. Nothing fancy, just sun and drinks and sleep. You know how it is. Jen's been losing her mind with work. Sasha's going through that thing with her boyfriend. And I just need a break." She gave a little laugh after saying that last part. The kind of laugh that's supposed to make a statement sound lighter than it actually is. I didn't think too much of it. Alyssa's always been the type who thrives on movement. New places, new experiences, time with her circle of friends, especially her core four, as she called them. Jen, Sasha, Mira, and her had been tight since college. They did these girls' trips maybe once a year, sometimes less. It wasn't out of the ordinary. Of course I'm cool with it, I told her. You deserve it. And I meant that. She worked hard. She'd been stretched thin the past few months, back-to-back meetings, late-night projects, barely taking any time for herself. I figured a few days of beach and gossip with her best friends would be good for her. Might even recharge some of that spark I'd noticed dimming lately, though I never said it out loud. She lit up a bit when I said yes. Really? I know we haven't taken a trip in a while, but I figured you'd be annoyed if I went without you. Not at all, I said. Go. Have fun. Just bring me back one of those little souvenir magnets. She smiled, leaned over, and kissed my cheek. You're the best. I wish I could say I felt nothing but support in that moment. But there was a flicker, just the faintest feeling that something was off. Not because she said or did anything wrong, but because of what she didn't say. Normally, when we talked about trips, she'd include me in the brainstorm. Ask if I had time off, see if we could both go somewhere. This felt already decided. Like I was being informed, not invited. But I pushed it down. She deserved this. I didn't want to be that guy who second-guesses his wife just because she wants some time away. We're all allowed that, right? Over the next 2 weeks, she got more and more excited. She shopped for swimsuits, ordered a new pair of sunglasses, and even went back and forth over which books to download for the beach. The whole group was apparently coordinating outfits for one of the dinners. She showed me pictures of dresses, asked which ones I liked. I played along, smiling, giving opinions, trying to be supportive, even though something inside me felt off balance. I chalked it up to missing her in advance. The night before she left, we packed her bag together. I offered to drive her to the airport, but she said Mira was picking her up. The four of them were meeting early and taking the same flight. She kissed me goodbye, told me she'd FaceTime me from the resort, and disappeared into the morning light with her carry-on and beach hat. I watched her go, waved from the porch. I even felt proud. Like I was being the good husband, the secure, trusting kind. The one who supports his wife and doesn't make a fuss. She sent a photo from the airport with the caption, "Here we go." I double-tapped it, smiled, and went back to making my morning coffee. I had no idea what was actually waiting on the other side of that flight. I didn't expect to hear from her constantly while she was gone. I mean, it was a girls' trip, not a business trip. They were probably busy lounging poolside, sipping drinks, doing spa days, staying up late talking about God knows what. I figured maybe a photo or two here and there, a short call at night just to check in. But by the second day, I started noticing the silence more than the sound. The first night, she sent a selfie, her and the girls dressed up for dinner, drinks in hand, all smiles. Her dress was more revealing than what she usually wore, but I didn't think much of it. She looked amazing. I sent her a flirty message and told her she looked great. Her reply? Thanks, smiling face, miss you. Short. No, I miss you too. No FaceTime like she promised. But again, I let it go. The next day, I texted her around noon. Just a simple, how's the beach? No reply. A few hours passed. I tried again, lighthearted. Did you already run off with a cabana boy? Still nothing. Not until almost 8 p.m. that night when she finally replied, sorry, babe. Spa day turned into pool day, then nap, then dinner. Exhausted. Love you. It wasn't like her to go the whole day without a word, especially when she knew I'd be missing her. Alyssa's always been quick to respond, usually the type to send a reaction even if she didn't have time for a full message. This felt delayed, off-tempo. By the third day, the pattern continued. Radio silence until late at night. Photos posted to her Instagram story, sunsets, drinks, a slow pan across the resort pool, but none of her. None of the group, either. Just generic travel stuff. And I know this sounds crazy, but the way she wrote her captions? It didn't sound like her. No emojis. No little inside jokes. Just vague, almost impersonal lines like, finally found some peace or sunshine therapy. I don't know. Maybe it's just me being overly tuned in. But when you know someone as well as I know her, you notice when their rhythm changes. I brought it up gently when she finally called that night. She sounded tired. Not sleepy tired. More like drained. Distracted. I told her I missed her and asked if everything was okay. She laughed it off. Yeah, of course. Sorry, I'm just so wiped. The sun here is no joke. I think I'm finally relaxing, you know? I said, yeah. Just feels like you're kind of far away. There was a pause, longer than it should have been. I'm on a different continent, babe, she said with a small laugh. Of course I'm far away. I didn't push it. I didn't want to be the clingy husband who couldn't handle his wife being gone for 5 days. But that night, I kept checking my phone, waiting for another message. She didn't send one. The next morning, I woke up and realized she hadn't texted goodnight. That was a first. I looked at her last seen on WhatsApp. She'd been online at 2:14 a.m. local time over there. I hadn't heard from her since before midnight. She used to fall asleep mid-text with me. Maybe I'm just paranoid, I told myself. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. But something was off. I could feel it in my gut. And the gut doesn't lie. By the 4th day of her trip, the unease wasn't just creeping in, it was living in my chest. I'd started watching the clock in ways I never had before. I checked the time difference between here and there, trying to rationalize the gaps in our communication. She's probably still at the beach, I'd say. Maybe they're doing some group dinner thing. I kept making excuses for her, stacking them one on top of another like sandbags against a rising tide. But the problem with trying to explain away doubt is that it only ever quiets the noise, it never erases it. And the silence between us was getting louder. That morning, I noticed something strange. She'd sent me a single photo, her legs stretched out in front of a lounge chair, drink in hand, beach in the background. At first glance, it was like any vacation snapshot. But after a minute, I realized I'd seen that exact same photo before. Not identical, but close, same angle, same composition, from our trip to the Dominican Republic 2 years ago. I opened my old photo library just to be sure. The sky and water were different shades, but everything else, the way her anklet was twisted, the corner of the towel, even the slightly chipped polish on her big toe, it was eerily similar. I tried to convince myself it was just coincidence, that she probably thought it was a cute recreation and didn't think twice about it. But the more I looked, the more it felt staged. She hadn't called me the night before. Not even a quick check-in. No, good night, love you. No, today was fun. Can't wait to tell you all about it. Just radio silence. And when I texted her in the morning, it took her over 6 hours to respond. She said she had a headache from drinking too much the night before and slept in. That would have made sense, if not for the fact that I saw her little green dot on Instagram just before 9 a.m. her time. So she was awake, just not talking to me. And the worst part is, I started pretending I didn't notice. I didn't tell anyone what I was feeling. Not my friends, not my brother, not even my coworker Lucas, who usually hears everything going on in my life whether he wants to or not. I didn't want to speak it into reality. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I kept it inside, it wouldn't be real. But it was like walking around with a splinter in my chest. Small, but constantly reminding me it was there. I started scrolling back through our messages from earlier that month, before the trip, and I couldn't help noticing the slow fade. The way her texts had gone from long, warm replies to clipped answers. Her responses used to be peppered with hearts and dumb inside jokes. Lately, they read more like polite acknowledgments. Yep. Sure. Cool. Haha. I told myself I was being dramatic. That she was probably just overwhelmed or genuinely needing the space. That I should be glad she's having fun. But the thing is, I know her. I know the version of her that's just busy. I know the version that's tired. And this wasn't either of those. This was something else. That night, I got a call from her, but it was brief, and she sounded detached. Her voice was upbeat in the way customer service voices are upbeat. Measured. Controlled. She told me they had done a boat tour and then a beach bonfire. Wish you were here, she said, but it felt automatic. Like muscle memory. When I asked who took the boat photo she posted, she paused, then said, Mira, I think? Which wouldn't have been weird, except Mira was never tagged, mentioned, or visible in any of the photos. In fact, none of the girls were. Her social media had become this odd, sterile string of landscapes and drinks with no people in them. For a group trip, it felt weirdly solo. I didn't sleep much that night. Just laid there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was being paranoid or if my gut was starting to scream something I wasn't ready to hear. My mind kept circling one question I didn't want to ask out loud. What if she's not with them at all? By the time day 5 rolled around, I had become someone I didn't recognize. Obsessive. Paranoid. Glued to my phone, watching her online activity like it held the answers to every question I was too afraid to ask out loud. I'd tell myself to let it go, to focus on work or take a walk or do literally anything else, but my thoughts kept spiraling back to her. To that island. To that strange silence. Into the growing, unbearable feeling that I was being played for a fool. I wanted so badly to believe I was overthinking everything. I even tried to give myself a stern mental talk. She's with her friends. She's allowed to disconnect. You told her to enjoy herself. Stop acting like a jealous teenager. But it was like my instincts refused to sit quietly. They kept pointing at the same oddities. The delayed texts. The vague, impersonal phone calls. The ghost town social media posts that somehow managed to show everything but the people she was supposedly with. It felt like a performance. A careful presentation. And once you start seeing things that way, it's hard to unsee. That morning, I did something I've never done before in our entire relationship. I looked at her location. Not because I was trying to catch her. I told myself it was just to put my mind at ease. We'd shared locations for years. It wasn't even something we talked about much. Just one of those features that came with trust. The map loaded slowly, and when it did, my stomach tightened. According to the pin, she wasn't anywhere near the resort. I refreshed. Checked again. Still the same, some generic-looking part of town about 15 minutes inland. I looked it up. No beach. No hotels. Mostly small homes, a few local shops. Definitely not tourist central. I stared at the map for a long time, trying to rationalize it. Maybe they went into town for food. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe she turned off location sharing, and it defaulted to an old ping. I texted her, "Hey, how's today going?" and stared at the screen like it might talk back. No reply. I didn't want to press. I didn't want to give away that something inside me was unraveling. So instead, I did something even more pathetic. I opened Instagram and checked the stories of all her friends. Jin, Sasha, Mira. Not a single one had posted anything from the trip. In fact, Myra's last story was from 3 days ago at a bar in what looked like her hometown. I froze. I went back and checked again. Same bar, clear signage in the background. There was no way she was on that trip. I didn't even know what to do with that. I sat there, phone in hand, mind racing. I wasn't ready to go full conspiracy mode. I didn't want to accuse Alyssa of anything. I still hadn't seen or heard anything concrete. But now it wasn't just that things didn't add up. It was that pieces were actively missing. Big ones. I told myself to wait until she called that night. To play it cool. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Mira had to back out last minute and didn't say anything. Maybe the location was a one-off fluke. Maybe they were just going off-grid for a few days. But I knew that if I kept stacking maybes like this, it was only a matter of time before the whole thing came crashing down. That evening, she finally called. I almost didn't answer. My heart was pounding. She sounded cheerful. Too cheerful. Her voice had that extra lilt to it, the same one she used when she wanted to rush through a conversation without getting questioned. I asked her what they'd been up to, and she said they'd done another boat day and were heading out to a local club later. I asked how Mira was holding up, just to see. There was a pause. Not even a long one. Just a second too long. "She's good," Alyssa said. Same old Mira. I don't know why, but that hit me harder than anything else so far. It was such a simple, nothing line. But something in the delivery told me everything I didn't want to know. I told her I loved her, and she said it back. But it sounded like a reflex, not a feeling. And the moment we hung up, I sat in the dark and just stared at the blank screen. I didn't have proof, but I didn't need it anymore. The thing about dread is that it doesn't announce itself like fear does. It's quieter, slower. It creeps in through the cracks, settles in your chest, and waits. By the 6th night of her trip, I wasn't even pretending anymore. I knew something was wrong. I felt it in my bones. In the silence. In the lag between my messages and her half-hearted replies. In the way I couldn't look at our wedding photo without flinching. I told myself I'd confront her when she got back. That I'd hold it together, look her in the eye, and ask, not accuse, just ask. That plan never got to happen. At 9:47 p.m., my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Out of instinct, I almost let it go to voicemail, but something curiosity, maybe, made me answer. I didn't even get a chance to say hello before I heard a voice I barely recognized. "Mark, hey, it's Sasha." I sat up straighter. Alyssa's friend? One of the 4? My mind scrambled. Why was she calling me directly? "Hey," I said cautiously. "Everything okay?" There was a pause, then a shaky exhale. I don't even know if I should be doing this," she said. "But I can't just sit on it anymore." My pulse was thundering in my ears. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and leaned hard against the counter. "What's going on?" "They're not on a girl's trip," she said. Her voice cracked. "At least, not in the way you think." The world tilted. What do you mean? I wasn't invited, Sasha continued. Neither was Jin. I thought it was weird at first, but Alyssa told everyone it was just her and Mira doing a reset thing. Some kind of spiritual wellness trip. Then Mira posted something from here. Our town. I asked her about it, and Mark, she didn't even know there was a trip happening. I said nothing. I couldn't. My throat was dry, my chest tight. She's not with the girls. She's with random guys. Different ones. Every day, apparently. Her voice dropped to a whisper, like she could barely say it out loud. One of my coworkers saw her at a beachside bar, all over some guy she met there. He took pictures. Sent them to me. I wasn't even going to tell you. I didn't want to get involved, but it's not just a fling. She's hooking up with strangers. Like the whole trip's been one long hookup tour. I pressed a hand to my face. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't thinking. I was just suspended. Somewhere between heartbreak and nausea. She planned this, Mark, Sasha said quietly. She planned it behind your back. I didn't know until today. But once I put the pieces together, I couldn't keep pretending. My knees buckled slightly, and I slid down to the kitchen floor. I could still hear Sasha talking, apologizing, saying she didn't know what I was going to do. I barely registered the words. All I could see in my mind was Alyssa. Her smile. The way she looked at me the morning she left. Like nothing was wrong. Like we were fine. Like she hadn't already chosen to burn it all to the ground. Can you send me those pictures? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause. Then a soft, yeah. I'm sorry. She hung up. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. For images. There was Alyssa, sitting on a bar stool, legs crossed, leaning into a man I'd never seen before. His hand was on her thigh. In another, she was kissing someone different, against a column on the patio. Same dress. Same night. My hands were shaking. There's a kind of pain that doesn't feel real at first. Like your body is protecting you from the worst of it. Everything went numb. I just stared at those images, heart hollowing out with every second. And still, somehow, I found myself whispering, why? She had looked me in the eyes before leaving. She had kissed me, told me she loved me, promised to call, promised to come back. And the entire time, she had planned to betray me. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry. I just sat in the dark, staring at the woman I thought I knew, now a stranger frozen in a stranger's arms. I didn't sleep the night I got the pictures. I just sat there in the quiet, looking at the woman I used to call my wife wrapped around men I'd never met, men she probably didn't know, either. My mind flicked through every memory, every touch, every laugh we'd shared like they were photos in a book I never really owned. She'd played me, lied with ease, smiled as she packed her suitcase, kissed me goodbye, and walked straight into someone else's beds, plural, apparently. But by morning, the shock had burned off. All that was left was this cold, surgical clarity. She was flying home that evening. I knew what flight she was on. I knew when she'd land. I knew when she'd walk through that front door and pretend like nothing happened. And I knew I wasn't going to let her. I called Sasha first. She didn't hesitate. I told her I needed a favor, and she said yes before I even explained what. There was bitterness in her voice, too. She was disgusted with Alyssa. Said she felt used, betrayed, embarrassed by association. And then she said something I didn't expect. You want her to feel it? Really feel it? Yes, I said, without even blinking. I want her to know exactly what it feels like. The plan came together fast. That afternoon, Sasha came over. We didn't fake anything. We didn't force it. There was too much anger and history and brokenness between us for it to be meaningless. We kissed like we were exorcising something, her guilt, my heartbreak, both of us needing to feel something sharp and deliberate. When it was over, I set up the camera. The same one Alyssa and I used to use to film vacation clips. I pointed it directly at the bed, played the footage back just to make sure it captured everything. Then I sent it to her. No message. No caption. Just the raw, uncut file. 5 minutes later, my phone started ringing. I didn't answer. 10 minutes after that, she pulled into the driveway. I heard the key in the door. Heard her call out, "Babe? I'm home," like nothing had changed. Like she wasn't dragging a suitcase full of sand and secrets into my house. I walked into the foyer and saw her standing there in her airport hoodie and leggings, sunglasses pushed up into her messy hair, trying to smile like everything was fine. I could see the panic in her eyes, though. She knew. You got my message? I asked, calmly. Her mouth opened and closed. I don't know what that was. Don't lie. Not here. Not now. I can explain. No, I said, cutting her off. You don't get to explain anything. You don't get the floor. You don't get this space. She took a step forward, but I backed up. I know what you did. I know who you were with. I know everything. Her voice cracked. It was just a mistake. I laughed. A mistake? It wasn't one guy. It wasn't one night. It was a goddamn vacation of betrayal. You think I don't know? Your own friend told me. I have the pictures. I have the timestamps. I have everything. She started crying, hard. Not graceful movie tears. Ugly crying. She dropped her bag, reached out to me, and I stepped around her. Go upstairs, I said. Grab whatever you need. You have 10 minutes. Then you leave. Please, just let me explain. I'm messed up. I was lonely, Al. You were bored, I snapped. You wanted the thrill. You wanted to be wanted. And you thought I'd never find out. But I did. And now you get to live with that. She started begging, swearing it didn't mean anything, telling me we could work through it, that we had too much history to throw it all away. I stared at her. That video I sent you? That was me throwing it away. You torched this marriage the second you booked that trip. I just made sure you'd feel the heat too. She was shaking. With Sasha? How could you? How could I? I repeated. How could you? She tried again. Mark, I love you. No, you don't, I said. You loved the comfort. You loved the version of me that didn't know the truth. But that guy's gone. And so are you. She went upstairs, sobbing the whole way. I didn't follow. I didn't care what she took. I just needed her gone. 10 minutes later, she walked past me, dragging her suitcase, eyes swollen and red. She paused at the door, like she thought I'd change my mind. I didn't. She walked out, and I closed the door behind her, locked it, and for the first time in days, I breathed. The house was silent after she left. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the kind you get on a quiet Sunday morning when the coffee's brewing and the world hasn't woken up yet. No, this was something else. A hollow, echoing silence that filled every corner of the place. Every room felt like it was holding its breath. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just sat in the living room for hours that night, staring at nothing, surrounded by everything we'd built together. The photos. The couch we picked out. The stupid throw pillows she insisted on that I pretended to hate but actually loved. Her scent still lingered in the air, faint but unmistakable. That kind of thing doesn't go away right away. Neither does the feeling. Sasha texted me the next morning. One line, "Are you okay?" I didn't respond. I wasn't angry at her. In fact, I was grateful. She didn't owe me the truth. She didn't owe me anything. But she gave it anyway. What happened between us, that moment of revenge, it wasn't about passion. It was about reclaiming something that had been ripped away. The right to feel like I had a say in my own story. The day after Alyssa left, I called out of work. Told them I needed some time off. They didn't ask why. I think my voice gave enough away. I spent the entire day cleaning, not out of spite, not out of some symbolic act of erasing her, but because I needed to do something. I stripped the bed, washed everything, scrubbed the bathroom, boxed up the things that belonged to her. Her shoes, her hairbrush, her drawer in the nightstand. I didn't throw anything away. I just didn't want to see it anymore. People started finding out. Jen called me first. Said she was stunned. Said she had no idea what Alyssa had been doing, that she hadn't even heard from her since before the trip. She apologized over and over again, like she'd been complicit just by proximity. I told her not to blame herself. Then I told her not to bring Alyssa around me ever again. I think she understood. My brother came by later that week. He didn't say much. Just handed me a six-pack and sat next to me while we watched a basketball game we didn't care about. That's how brothers show love, I guess. Through silence and presence. I appreciated it more than I could say. Alyssa called twice. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail the second time. Her voice sounded small, defeated. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, but she hoped I'd listen. That she wanted to explain, not to excuse it, but to give me closure. That she still loved me, in some broken way, and hated what she'd done. She said she hadn't been happy in a long time, but she didn't know how to say it without destroying everything. I deleted the voicemail. You don't get to burn a house down and then knock on the ashes asking to explain. It's been a few days now. The house is quieter. The air feels different. Some moments I feel like I can breathe again. Others hit me like a gut punch. The way I still instinctively check my phone, waiting for a message from her. The way I reach for 2 coffee mugs instead of one. I don't know what the future looks like yet. I haven't gotten that far. Right now, I'm just surviving the moments, one at a time. But here's what I do know. I didn't deserve what she did. I didn't fail her. I showed up. I loved her. I believed in us until the end. That's not weakness. That's not naivete. That's what marriage is supposed to be. She's the one who stepped out. She's the one who made the choice. And I'm the one who has to rebuild from the ruins. It's been 3 weeks since she walked out of this house for the last time. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of no calls, no texts, no sudden knock on the door begging for another chance. Maybe she finally realized there's no coming back from what she did. Or maybe she's just burying herself in distractions, the same way she buried us during that trip. I don't know. I don't care. That part of me, the one that would have waited up, that would have forgiven her even after the first crack, it's gone. She killed it with every lie she told with a smile on her face. It's strange, though. You think when someone betrays you like that, it'll all come crashing down in fire and screaming. But it didn't. It ended with a door closing. With silence. With me standing in the kitchen the next morning, making 1 cup of coffee instead of 2, and realizing that the world didn't stop just because mine did. People keep asking me how I'm doing. I say I'm fine. Sometimes I even believe it. The truth? I'm learning. Slowly. Learning to breathe in the quiet again. Learning how to exist in a space that doesn't revolve around someone else's orbit. Learning that love, real love, isn't supposed to leave you feeling small, or second-guessing yourself, or constantly asking what else you could have done. I did everything I could. I showed up. I stayed. I believed in a future she walked away from the second she boarded that plane. I haven't dated. I'm not ready. Not because I'm still in love with her. I'm not. But because I need to figure out who I am now. For so long, my identity was wrapped up in us. Now I'm trying to remember who I was before her. Who I want to be after her. There are still bad nights. Sometimes I wake up expecting to hear her breathing next to me. Sometimes I hear a song and my chest tightens for no reason other than memory. Sometimes I see couples walking hand in hand, and I hate that they still believe in something I lost. But then there are the good days. Like yesterday, when I took a hike alone for the first time in years. Just me, a packed lunch, and a trail she never wanted to try. I sat at the top of a ridge, wind in my face, and felt something I haven't felt in a long time. Peace. Not closure. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But peace. That's the part no one tells you about betrayal. That it's not just the relationship that dies. It's the version of you that existed inside it. And mourning that version takes time. But piece by piece, I'm rebuilding. I'm talking to friends again. Picking up hobbies I left behind. I even started journaling, something I haven't done since college. And, yeah, posting this story here helped too. Just saying it all out loud, to people who don't know me but still get it, that matters. So if you've read this far, thank you. For listening. For sitting in the dark with me for a while. For letting me say all the things I couldn't say to her. She'll always be part of my story. But she won't be the ending. That's mine to write. And I'm just getting started.